There's a decision millions of Americans make every single year that feels completely logical in the moment. And then, about 10 years later, it quietly costs them somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000, sometimes more. The decision is claiming Social Security at 62. And before anyone feels defensive about that, this isn't about shame. It isn't about bad choices or financial irresponsibility. Most people who claim early do it for completely reasonable reasons. They're tired. Their body is worn out. Their job disappeared. Their spouse got sick. Or somebody they trusted told them, "Take it while you can, you never know." That advice sounds wise. In certain situations, it actually is wise. But for a lot of people, probably more than half of the folks who file at 62, it turns out to be one of the most expensive, quiet mistakes of their entire retirement. And the thing is, nobody sits down and explains the full math before you sign the paperwork. So that's what we're going to do here. Let's start with what most people actually know about Social Security timing, because the general idea is simple enough. You can claim as early as 62. Your full retirement age, the age where you get your complete calculated benefit, is somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on when you were born. And if you wait past full retirement age, your benefit keeps growing, all the way up to age 70. That part most people have heard. What they haven't heard, or haven't really absorbed, is what those differences actually mean in dollar terms over a real retirement. Here's the baseline. If your full retirement age benefit is, say, $1,800 a month, claiming at 62 cuts that to roughly $1,260. That's a 30% reduction. Permanent. Built into every check for the rest of your life. Wait until 70, and that same benefit grows to somewhere around $2,350 a month. So the spread between claiming at 62 versus waiting until 70 is over $1,000 a month. Every month. $12,000 a year. For as long as you live. People hear that and they think, well, sure, but I have to wait 8 extra years to get there. And if I claimed at 62, I was already collecting all that time. That's the right instinct. It just leads to the wrong conclusion more often than people expect. There's a concept called the break-even point, and it's where this decision gets real. If you claim early, you're collecting smaller checks over a longer period. If you delay, you're collecting larger checks over a shorter period, at first. The break-even point is the age where the total lifetime income from waiting finally surpasses the total lifetime income from claiming early. For most people comparing 62 to 67, that break-even lands somewhere around 78 to 80 years old. Now here's the psychological trap. Most people hear 78 and think, I might not even make it that long. I should take the money now. That reaction makes complete sense. It's also statistically off for most people in decent health. A 62-year-old American today who has no serious health conditions has a better than 50% chance of living past 85. Women statistically live even longer. And if you're married, the odds that at least one of you lives into your late 80s or beyond are actually quite high. What that means in real terms, the average person in reasonable health who claims at 62 and lives to 85 quietly leaves somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000 on the table, compared to what they would have collected waiting until full retirement age. Compared to waiting until 70, that gap can exceed $100,000 over a lifetime. That's not a rounding error. That's real money that most people never think of as a decision they made. There's another layer here that almost never comes up in the general conversation about early claiming. It has to do with what happens to your benefit if you're still working. A lot of 62-year-olds aren't fully retired. They're semi-retired. They're doing part-time work. They're doing freelance. They're picking up shifts because they need the income while they wait for something else to come through. And here's what most of them don't know. If you claim Social Security before your full retirement age and you're still earning income from work, the Social Security Administration will temporarily reduce your benefit. In 2025, if you're under full retirement age for the whole year and you earn more than about $22,000, they withhold $1 in benefits for every $2 you earn above that limit. So you might file at 62 thinking you're bringing in extra income, Social Security plus part-time wages, and instead you find out your check is being partially withheld or suspended. Now, to be fair, those withheld dollars aren't gone forever. The SSA recalculates your benefit once you hit full retirement age and credits you back. But in the meantime, you've filed. You've locked in a permanently reduced benefit. The adjustment helps, but it doesn't fully undo the reduction from claiming early. A lot of people find this out after the fact. They assume the rules were simpler than they are. The part that gets almost no attention at all is what early claiming does to a surviving spouse. This is where the stakes get genuinely serious. When a married person dies, the surviving spouse can claim the deceased partner's Social Security benefit, if it's larger than their own. That's called the survivor benefit. And it can be the primary income source for a widowed person for the rest of their life. Now think about what happens when the higher earner in a marriage claims at 62. They lock in a reduced benefit, permanently. And that reduced benefit becomes the ceiling for what the surviving spouse can ever collect after they're gone. So a husband who would have received $2,300 a month at 70, but claimed at 62 and got $1,260 instead. If he dies first, his wife's survivor benefit is based on that reduced amount. She may be in her 70s. She may be living on a fixed income with rising Medicare costs and inflation eating into her purchasing power. And her primary financial lifeline is a benefit that got permanently capped 30 years earlier by a decision made over breakfast one Tuesday morning. This is one of those things that genuinely doesn't feel real when you're 62. You're thinking about today. You're thinking about the next few years. You're not picturing your spouse at 79 alone, working through a medical crisis on a significantly smaller monthly check. But that's the real-world consequence, and it plays out every single day across this country. There are absolutely situations where claiming at 62 makes sense. Let's be honest about that. If you have a serious health condition that meaningfully shortens your life expectancy, the math shifts dramatically. Collecting a smaller check for more years can genuinely come out ahead. If you have no other income and you need the money to cover basic living expenses, waiting isn't an option. You take what you can get. That's not a bad financial decision. That's survival. If you're the lower earner in a marriage and your spouse is delaying their own larger benefit, claiming your smaller benefit early while your spouse waits can actually be a reasonable, coordinated strategy. The point isn't that claiming at 62 is always wrong. The point is that for most people, in most situations, it's a permanent decision that gets made without running the actual numbers, without modeling out the break-even, without thinking through the survivor benefit implications, without considering how much it matters that they're likely to live another 20 or 25 years. People make the decision based on emotion, exhaustion, and general anxiety, not based on a clear picture of what their lifetime income actually looks like across multiple scenarios. And that's where the quiet financial damage happens. There's one more piece of this that tends to surface years after the claiming decision, and it catches people off guard. Social Security benefits are subject to federal income tax above certain income thresholds. Up to 85% of your benefit can become taxable, depending on your combined income from other sources. Most people don't know this when they're planning. They think of Social Security as a tax-free benefit, and for lower-income retirees, it largely is. But if you have pension income, IRA withdrawals, investment income, or any rental income stacking on top of your Social Security, a significant portion of that benefit gets pulled into your taxable income. Now here's the connection to the timing decision. If you claim early and lock in a smaller benefit, and then you need to pull more from your IRA each year to cover the gap, you may actually end up paying more in taxes on those withdrawals than you saved by claiming Social Security early. It's counterintuitive, but it happens. You claim early to get more income, and in the process you accelerate your IRA withdrawals, which pushes your income higher, which exposes more of your Social Security to taxation, which reduces the net benefit you actually keep. The whole thing creates a loop that most people don't see coming, because nobody explains how these income sources interact with each other. They're usually explained in isolation, like separate boxes. But in retirement, they're all connected. The Social Security Administration has tools on their website that let you estimate your benefit at different claiming ages. It's worth actually spending time there. Running the numbers in your own specific situation, accounting for your health, your spouse's benefit, your other income sources, your realistic life expectancy, changes the picture completely for most people. A fee-only financial planner, the kind who charges a flat fee and doesn't earn commissions, can run a full claiming analysis that shows your cumulative lifetime income under several different scenarios. For a lot of people, that single conversation is genuinely eye-opening. The earlier this analysis happens, ideally in your late 50s, before the decision feels urgent, the more room you have to plan around it. By the time you're sitting at the Social Security office filling out forms, the window to adjust is already closed. That's just the reality of how this works. The decision is permanent the moment it's made. Most financial mistakes don't announce themselves. They don't feel like disasters in the moment. They feel like reasonable choices made under pressure, with incomplete information, at a time when you just needed to move forward. Claiming Social Security at 62 is often exactly that, a reasonable-seeming decision made with the information available at the time that plays out over 20 or 25 years in ways nobody fully mapped out in advance. The goal here isn't to tell anyone they made the wrong call. It's to make sure that anyone who hasn't made the call yet understands what they're actually deciding. Not just this month's check, but the full picture. Because once you see the full picture, the decision you make is at least one you made with your eyes open.